Hi, this is Eddie Hearn, and you're watching Lights Out.
Anthony Joshua's next fight has been announced. March the 8th, he takes on Francis Ngannou. But we'll be discussing, is it the right move for AJ? Turkey Alal Sheikh also announces he wants to put on a dream card. He wants Matchroom to take on Queensberry in a best-of-5 series. Artur Beterbiev absolutely demolishes Callum Smith and takes a step closer to an undisputed clash. We'll be talking about what's next for Beterbiev, his performance, his win, and what it will take to finally get the undisputed clash at £175. This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and this is podcast 70 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. With me, as always, delighted to be joined by my main man, my right-hand man, the man who likes to consider himself the face of Lights Out Boxing, subjectable, Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ron. Ron, a pleasure as always. Firstly, how are you doing? It's the first podcast of 2024. We haven't spoken in quite a while. What's different with you? What's new with you? And before we do talk about the podcast, what are you really looking forward to most this year from boxing?
I think we had, thank you very much. Yeah, all good. Looking to another good year of boxing. If anything, 2023 was anything to go by, the way that ended off with, we had a great fight in Riyadh, and we're going to get the second installment of Riyadh season in March, which has been announced, which you're going to talk about. Yeah, I'm just looking for more bigger fights now. I think a lot of criticism has been received by boxing, in comparison to UFC. But boxing's stepping up now. I think they realize that people will switch off. People will kind of watch more competitive kind of combat. So that's what I'm really excited about in the boxing world. So just to see what next, Saudi has to offer, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later on today.
Absolutely. We've got a lot to discuss today. And before we obviously do start with the quick fire question, just a few friendly reminders for all the viewers out there. If you haven't already, please make sure you smash the subscribe button, turn on the bell for more Lights Out boxing content. And of course, if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, again, links are going to be below in the description with our social media platforms as well. Ron, the reins have been handed over to you. So quick fire question is now your job. And again, guys, I'd just like to state that I don't know what the quick fire question is. So forgive me if one of my answers might seem a bit, I don't know, might rough people up the wrong way. But Ron, floor's all yours, my man. What's today's quick fire question?
Okay, I'm going to keep it simple. What is your favorite boxing nickname?
Okay.
Obviously, our channel is called Lights Out. That's homage to James Toney, but there's been some great names, that boxers have gone by. I want to know what's yours.
So I've got two, right? And there's a story behind my second one. So my second one is Kid Dynamite, strictly because if you remember Fight Night Champion, where the career mode is you make a fighter, you make a boxer, and he's got to have a nickname. And I always just went with Kid Dynamite. I just feel as if it's flashy, it's a good name for a young, cocky, arrogant boxer who you can just tell is going to be the next best thing. And the second one is, sorry, the first one. El Terrible. Which fight was known as El Terrible? It's Eric Morales, wasn't it?
Pereira was babyface, wasn't it? The babyface assassin.
Yes.
So yeah, El Terrible was, you're right, Eric Morales. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, you love it. I mean, it kind of adds to their PR appeal, isn't it? And you love hearing Michael Buffer kind of mention the nickname as well as the name. So
what's yours? What's your favorite one?
I liked Hands of Stone. Let's see if you know who that is.
Let me guess. Roberto Duran?
It is Roberto Duran. Iron Mike Tyson as well.
Okay. That's not a bad one.
You got Prince Nazim Ahmed. I mean, you got King Khan. So
if you was a boxer, Ron, what would your nickname be? Do you want to know what mine would be?
What would it be?
Actually, no. I'll tell you when we meet up on Friday night. I don't think the viewers would want to hear it. But God, what would your nickname be?
I don't know. Probably something cool like Fist of Fury or something. I mean, I don't know. That's something like that.
It's catchy. It's catchy. But listen, guys, love for you
But
to
I
get.
think there's going to be a story behind it. I mean, how do they pick their nicknames? Any idea? I mean, there is some sort of tradition with how that nickname comes about, right? Is it coaches or trainers or is it people that you work with? They kind of pick a nickname.
I think these days with fighters, right, you get a lot of fighters that kind of go on their background, this sort of epic background. Like you got Tyson Fury, who's the Gypsy King. I don't know. I don't know how the nicknames come about, but there has been some catchy ones. Prince Nassim was definitely one that I really liked, and Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. There was a
Yeah.
pronunciation in Mexican for it as well. I can't remember what it is. I barely speak English, so I'm not even going to try and pronounce it in Mexican. But,
Another one I like is Marvelous Marvin Hagler,
Marvin
the
Hagler.
Hitman Tommy, the Hitman Hearns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously Ricky Hatton went by the same nickname as well.
Mm.
Oh God, who am I thinking of? Merciless Ray Mercer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're gonna love the creativity to it as
Do
well.
you know what? Muhammad Ali had another nickname that I really liked, the Louisville Lip.
The Louisville Lip.
Yes, I really like that.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I think I'm gonna test your knowledge here.
Go on.
We were just talking about Rocky at the moment. How many nicknames did Apollo Creed have? Let's.
They all come out before the fight against Ivan Drago. And Rocky said, are you sure you've got enough ring names?" So there was Dr. Steel Fist, the Master of Disaster, the King of Sting, the one, the only Apollo Creed. But he did have a lot in the fight, before the fight with Ivan Drago. But unfortunately, they never did him any. They never helped him out in the ring that night. But anyway, listen, let's move on because we've got a lot to discuss. But great quick fire question, Ron. And again, we'd love the viewers to get involved in our quick fire question this week. I'm looking forward to next week's one. We'll start off with obviously what had been pre-announced last week, but what has been confirmed today, that Anthony Joshua will take on Francis Ngannou on the 8th of March in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Riyadh season continues to deliver in boxing. Big boxing shows over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's the third show that they're putting on. Obviously, we had the press conference today. We had the face-off. We've seen some clips on social media regarding the round the table. We've seen Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren together again. I mean, it's coming like buses now. It's the third time that I've seen them at a press conference. So all positive things for boxing right now. But Ron, it is the sort of first big announcement of the year. Now, I'm going to let you obviously start first, but what's your thoughts on what you make of the Joshua versus Ngannou announcement, given the fact that he just beaten Otto Wallin and he is on the path of trying to become a three-time world champion? Is it a fight that you think is the right one to choose, or do you reckon he should have gone a different route?
I was convinced that he was going to go down the IBF route, but I guess that would have entailed kind of waiting around for the IBF title to become vacated, and obviously next in line would have been Hrgovic versus Anthony Joshua. I mean, this recent Anthony Joshua just wants to fight. He wants to be kept busy. Last year he fought 3 times, so that's the most active we've seen Anthony Joshua in the last few years of boxing. It was just like, when is he going to fight? So I was surprised. Not going to lie to you, when the fight versus Fury was announced, I absolutely slated that fight. I was like, oh my God, this is just ridiculous. It's not boxing, but look what kind of performance that Francis Ngannou put on. He walked away, even though he lost that fight. Some might argue he might have won that fight, but he showed he can definitely box. So it makes an interesting watch. People will kind of tune in to watch that fight. So, do I see anything? I don't. Do I see any? I'm sure you're going to ask me for my prediction, but I'm going to definitely go with AJ. But it's a good fight. It's an exciting fight to watch. But does it do anything towards his legacy, his career? What is the end goal of reclaiming the titles? I think it just kind of puts that on hold for now, but it's a competitive fight nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm just going to be brutally honest about it. I don't like it. The what I can't get is right is there was a lot of negative energy towards Tyson Fury when he was, when the fight was supposedly being talked about. There was so much negative energy towards Tyson Fury, and I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, I never criticized it. I criticized it. You knew what my thoughts were on him fighting Francis Ngannou. I wasn't a fan of it, and I'm not a fan of this. And if anything, right, Anthony Joshua's the one who, out of the two, right, Tyson Fury, in my opinion, was the one who could afford to take a fight with Francis Ngannou. Anthony Joshua can't afford to take a fight with Francis Ngannou because, what does a win do against Francis Ngannou for Anthony Joshua? Absolutely nothing. What did a win do for Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou? Absolutely nothing. If anything, Tyson Fury lost a lot of credibility for the fight with Francis Ngannou because of the performance and because of the choice of the opponent. Now, listen, I've got a lot of respect for Eddie Hearn. Yeah, I think he's the best promoter in boxing right now. He promotes his fight as well. He sells shows well. But you're talking about, oh, you believe that this guy is going to become a three-time world champion. You still believe he ends his career as a potential undisputed champion. Well, okay, if that's the case, what does he gain apart from a payday of fighting Francis Ngannou? He gains absolutely nothing. It's a line that you use quite often, Ron, and it's a line that I'm going to use. High risk, very, very low reward. There is no reward to beating Francis Ngannou. If he goes and knocks out Francis Ngannou, oh, you only beat an MMA guy who caught Tyson Fury on a bad night. If he beats him on points, oh, you could knock out an MMA guy. If it's a close fight, oh, well, you know what? Maybe Francis Ngannou is the boogeyman in the heavyweight division. I don't know, but me personally, right? You look at this undercard, yeah. You've got Zhilei Zhang versus Joseph Parker. Those are two opponents I would have liked to have seen Joshua fight on this card. I didn't want to see him fight Francis Ngannou. There's a part of me after the Wallin fight that I got very excited for. Yep, he's active again. He's going to fight the top contenders in the division. And then this happens. You had Talk Sport, you had Eddie Hearn, you had everybody out there slate Tyson Fury for taking this fight. And there's not been no negative energy coming from anywhere this time round, strictly because it's Anthony Joshua. And I think that's wrong. I think that's just shit in my opinion. If you're gonna slate Tyson Fury for taking the fight, as good as Ngannou was in it, it's got to be the same energy towards Anthony Joshua. And I just think that for a guy that's trying to become a world champion again, this is a bad move for him because he gains nothing from it. And I would rather have seen him fight Deontay Wilder. That's let's just say, right? Let's just say, yeah, Anthony Joshua wins this fight, yeah, okay. Deontay Wilder will fight again. He said he's going to fight again. He wins his next 2 or 3 fights, and then the top 2 are tied up in mandatory contracts, and there's a rematch for the undisputed. You've got the perfect opportunity to make the Joshua Wilder fight now. Okay, so he lost to Joseph Parker. It's not a shock that he lost to Joseph Parker, Ron. We seem to be forgetting one thing. If you know your boxing, Parker's lost to Joshua, and he's lost to Joe Joyce, and he's lost to Dillian White, and the guy's a former heavyweight world champion. So there's no disgrace and there's no shame in losing to Joseph Parker. It just does not make sense. Eddie Hearn, when they asked his opinion about it, oh yeah, don't know why he's fighting Francis Ngannou. He never wanted to fight Joshua. The Usyk and his team were the most easiest people to work with. And then when Fury puts that performance in against Joshua, oh, listen, now he should fight Francis Ngannou. Give me Tyson Fury now. It just doesn't add up to me. I'm disappointed. I'm actually disappointed. I did not want him to take this fight not because of it's a dangerous fight. I believe he'll smoke out Francis Ngannou. I really do. But what are you gaining from beating Francis Ngannou? Are you even in a position where you should be having these crossover fights? I don't think you are. Run over.
I mean, the one person I think you mentioned the name Deontay Wilder. He didn't follow the script. He was supposed to beat Joseph Parker that night, and this was supposed to set up another big night of boxing. And I promise you, it would have been more big names on that undercard. Sadly, we're not there. I mean, the reality is you got Fury and Usyk who are tied up for probably a 2-fight deal. Let's be honest, right? Whoever wins, it's going to be a rematch. Joshua wants to keep busy. Joseph Parker, it doesn't sell as much against, against AJ. All right. That's the problem was with Deontay Wilder's defeat, it was just like a landslide loss, not even a close loss, not even he just looked really poor. And I think maybe that fight didn't sell, considering he came back, he's coming off a loss against, Joseph Parker. I totally hear what you're saying. I was the one, I was, slating Tyson Fury for taking that fight. But, you've got to give credit where it's due to Ngannou. He put on a good performance. He looked like a boxer, looked like he knew what he was doing. He surprised
Ron, you caught Fury in a bad night. Let's not sit here and say,
yeah, look, you can't, you got to give
Fury in
credit
a bad night. Yeah, you give credit where it's due, Ron, but you don't.
Fury, okay.
But you don't, sorry to interrupt you, Ron.
Let me finish my point here.
Go on.
Fury is, I agree, he is, the best boxer, like for someone of his size. He put him on his backside. At points, Fury was on a back foot in that fight. He couldn't fight his natural way. Fury wasn't himself. But you've got to say it takes two to tango. Ngannou was doing something right. Okay, I take your point that it wasn't a good Tyson Fury performance. That wasn't. But that's him. That's him to blame, isn't it? Why didn't he come fully prepared for that fight? Why wasn't he, taking this fight seriously? That's on him. But nonetheless, the records will show that Fury won. But if you watch the fight, there was some moments where you kind of thought, all right, Ngannou can box quite a bit, and he did that against an elite fighter like Fury. So let's not knock him. Let's give him credit for that, I think. But back to, what you said earlier about, I see an AJ win. I can't see anything beyond that.
You know what, right? It's very anti-Joshua to go into this fight and put in a bad performance and win. But it's also very anti-Joshua-like to just smash this guy within a minute or 2 rounds. I don't know, but look, there's obviously, we're going to hear more from, your Talk Sports and your other, sort of outlets out there. And I don't want to hear different energy. I want to hear the same energy, And I'm not saying it because I'm a Tyson Fury fan. I'm just saying it like, you can't slate one guy for taking the fight and then all of a sudden make out as if this is, a proper fight just because he had 2-3 good rounds against Tyson Fury. No, absolutely no way. And I'm going to go back to my point, right? If anyone's in a position in boxing right now to be doing, especially in that heavyweight division, if anyone's in the position right now to be doing crossover fights, it is the WBC heavyweight champion, the undefeated heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, because he's beaten the best in the division so far, and he will beat Alexander Usyk on February the 17th. Okay, he is the king of the division. He's the money man in the division. So I don't want to hear people. I don't want to be hearing, oh yeah, it's a good fight. Yes, it's the perfect fight for Anthony Joshua. No, the perfect fight for Anthony Joshua is Zhilei ZHANG. In my opinion, this should be Joshua versus ZHANG. ZHANG smashed Joe Joyce to pieces twice last year. Anthony Joshua won 3 times. So right now the rankings are Fury 1, Usyk 2, Joshua 3, ZHANG 4. It should have been, and Joseph Parker right now is number 5 in that list. I don't care what anyone says. We're going on, last year ring activity and under record. That's the top 5 right now in my opinion. Yeah, because of wins and ring activity. This fight should have been Joshua versus ZHANG. That's the fight it should have been. I understand why they didn't make the Wilder fight. Okay, maybe that fight doesn't have an appeal in terms of money, and maybe fans don't want to see it. I want to see it. I'm pretty sure you wanted to see it. But then you look for the next best solution, Zhilei ZHANG. But listen, we move on, and I would really like to get everybody's thoughts on this, because this is a fight I'm not a fan of. I wasn't a fan of the fight when he fought Tyson Fury. I'm certainly not a fan of this fight. It gains nothing out of beating Francis Ngannou. And then, listen, I'm Turki Al-Sheikh's biggest fan, yeah, but he turned around and said in that press conference, and everything I agreed with him apart from when he said, the winner of this fight is going to fight the winner of Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk for all the belts. I'm like thinking, so hold on a second, right? Francis Ngannou is a former MMA star. In his 3rd fight, could be fighting for the undisputed champion. What a way to piss on the heavyweight division. Yeah, let's move on, because on that undercard will be Zhilei ZHANG versus Joseph Parker. 2 heavyweights who had a phenomenal 2023. And it's fair to say whoever wins that fight is definitely, well, we hope, gets a world title fight at some point in mid-2024. Ron, the perfect sort of warm-up fight before the exciting main event. Are you happy with Zhang versus Parker?
Yeah, I mean, I was hearing rumors that Deontay Wilder was going to be on that undercard
Yeah.
as well, but that didn't come to fruition.
Well, Ronnie lost, and it's the end of the world if you lose a fight apparently these days. So yeah.
Well, no, but that was being spoken up, and I was more excited for a Zhilei Zhang versus a Deontay Wilder. That's the fight I would have, just as a pure spectator, not even as a boxing fan. So yeah, I mean, great fight. You know, Joseph Parker's had three good wins in his last. You know, he's really turned a corner, and he's put himself in contention for another world title shot at some point if he comes through this fight. I agree with you. But Zhilei Zhang, 2 wins against Joe Joyce, you know, who was being touted as in the top 3. How do you see that fight going? Who's your money on?
You know what? I like what Andy Lee's doing with Joseph Parker right now. I think that's the best move Joseph Parker could have made, and obviously he trains a lot closer with the Furies, and he's improving. You know, he's getting better and better, which is a really good thing. But I think Zhilei Zhang, right, of what we've seen of those 2 performances against Joe Joyce last year, you know, and I said it after the second fight, I believe he's the 3rd best heavyweight in the world right now, given on current form right now. And it would have been interesting to see Joshua fight Zhang. But it's a good 50-50 fight. It's 2 heavyweights that are currently on a winning sort of path, and they're close to getting a crack at the world title. But right now, I favor Joseph Parker because, you know, if we look back at the fight when the 2 fights when Joe Joyce fight Zhilei Zhang, Joe Joyce never used a ring. He never moved his head. He wasn't active on his feet. Those 3 things is something that you see Joseph Parker do a lot of. You know, he's a movable fighter. He's very active behind the jab, and he likes to use the ring. And I just think that maybe that might be the sort of advantage going into this fight. But, you know, I don't think nobody gave Zhang a chance when he fought Joyce. You know, in both fights, you know, a lot of people saying, "Oh, the first fight was, you know, just caught him on a bad night, and Joyce will figure him out." But yeah, it's a very good fight. It's an interesting fight. But I kind of slightly favor Parker, strictly because I feel as if his style is going to be hard for Zhang to handle. But you never know. What do you predict?
Yeah, Zhang's power is relentless. I mean, what he did to Jojo's his eye. You know, he kind of proper busted him up. And you know, let's be honest. Look what Jojo did to Joseph Parker. So, if we're going by that, then I would favor more Zhang. But saying that, I didn't give Joseph Parker a chance against Deontay Wilder. And look at the performance that he did. Everything that you mentioned about getting behind his jab, you know, kind of moving around the ring, and he unloaded. That's one thing I really enjoyed watching that fight. That he wasn't afraid to kind of empty his tank out, and you know, he didn't get the knockout or knocked down at any point, but he was close enough. That Zhang, I don't know if he's ever been dropped in his career before, so he's a big unit. So, but Zhang, I think one thing that he has as a question mark is his stamina. You know, if how does Joyce win that fight? Does he take it into the later rounds and tire him out? And
You mean Parker?
and you know, using sorry, my apologies, Parker. Yeah. So how does he go about that? So
Well,
maybe that could be something that
it's an interesting fight, and it's a good fight. You know, on the card, it's the fight that I'm looking forward to the most. To be completely honest with you, and you know, the winner goes towards a world title shot. The loser has to begin a rebuilding phase, which again is not the end of the world in boxing. Also, during that press conference that we saw today in London, Turki Al Sheikh come out with the idea that he wants to host Matchroom versus Queensberry, a 5-on-5 sort of boxing tournament card night. Now, I remember many years ago, I believe me and you done a podcast or done some sort of content on this, and we said This would be great for boxing. Well, if Turkey Al Sheikh says he wants it to happen, it only means one thing: it's going to happen. And given some of the ideas that this genius of a man was coming out with, I mean, he's talking about he wants to put on an undisputed clash between Beterbiev and Bivol. You know, he's got so much ideas. All right, okay, I'm not going to give him his plaudits for putting on Joshua versus Ngannou, but we all know how good the sort of whole build up to the fight was and the spectacle of the show. Ron, we've got Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn on the same page now after many, many years. They are both currently working together. They're both promoting shows. You know, you've seen them at around the table. You've seen them at press conferences. They shook on it. You know, just how good would this be for boxing if we were to get a sort of Matchroom versus Queensberry 5-on-5 boxing event?
I'd love that. You know, this is something that we kind of spoke about a few years ago as a fantasy. You know, what if, you know, their best fighters went up against the other promotional company's best fighters, and now we're, you know, potentially on the verge of getting that. And I'm really looking forward to when they do announce what 5 fighters they're going to have. Yeah, we can only speculate who they might have. It depends on who's available at the time, but that could be a whole event in itself. You know, they don't even need a Tyson Fury or something. I mean, they could do that as a whole event, standalone event on its own. So I'll be waiting in anticipation for that news.
Yeah, listen, it's a great card that we could be we could be excited about, and obviously that's a card that you want sort of, you know, you want the best fight in the best. So, you know, Fury versus Joshua would obviously be a potential.
Oh, well,
They've not been involved in anything, but that's a discussion for another day. But this,
I
if you look at it right, I mean, Fury versus Joshua, you know, Yard versus, I don't know, Callum Smith. It's just, you know,
like that. That would be a great
so many
pair
good
up. That.
fights you can talk about. And listen, I'm excited, and I hope we get some sort of announcement on that soon. Just a couple of more topics to discuss, and obviously we'll start with what went down on last weekend for the first big fight of the year, and that was Artur Beterbiev versus Callum Smith. A one-sided beatdown. A lot of people are labeling that as Artur Beterbiev in what was his career best performance, I believe, stopping Callum Smith in round 7. Ron, the guy just gets better with age, doesn't he?
Wow, I mean, I was listening to a lot of these boxing analysts and the Smith brothers kind of talking about Callum Smith stopping him, you know, and we didn't expect a performance like that. You know, there's this a lot of people kind of questioning him. He's getting older. What is he, 39 years of age now, Beterbiev? You know, he's been dropped by Callum Johnson. So Callum Johnson that he got dropped by. So they were like, oh yeah, he's there to be hit. But I don't know if they underestimate the power this guy brings, man. Or I mean, this guy's got 20 knockouts. He's the only champion to have all 100% knockout ratio. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, what a performance. You know, you're right. You know, he is definitely getting better with age. I mean, the fight before that, he beat Anthony Yard. You know, that was a good matchup and a good finish as well. Now he's beat another British top, you know, elite fighter in Callum Smith. I mean, Callum Smith went, you know, 12 rounds with Canelo, you know, and he has Callum Smith ever been dropped before in any of his fights? I can't recall anything.
No,
so, and he did that twice, you know, and it was stopped. So you must have done something to, you know, to put on a hell of a performance like that against a Callum Smith, you know, who's a top, you know, light heavyweight contender. You know, unfortunate for him. I know you've had the pleasure of kind of speaking to him personally and interviewing him at his gym. So, you know, I wish him a speedy recovery, and you know, hopefully it's not the end of him yet. You know, he's got big and other good fights out there for him.
I agree. I hope it's not the end for him, because I think there's still a lot of domestic fights to be made. I believe once the Beterbiev Bivol fight does happen, the winner they'd both probably go up to cruiserweight. So then you get a lot of belts that become free, vacated. I had Callum Smith winning the fight off. I genuinely believe.
Yeah, you said it by knockout as well.
I believed he was going to knock him out. I just thought Beterbiev's last few performances against British opposition, I thought Callum Smith would be the man to do it. But, you know, I think a lot of us underestimated just how good Artur Beterbiev is. And, you know, Callum Smith could be proud of himself. Went to the other guy's backyard and just come up against a better fighter on the night. Having said that, listen, we know what Beterbiev is all about. We know what he's like. We know who he is. We know what he represents. Get the fight now with Bivol. You know, I was discussing with the boys. I still don't think it's a big fight in terms of globally, you know, because I don't think the public really have that appeal with Beterbiev and Bivol. But I think if you're a proper hardcore boxing fan, and I'm not disrespecting anyone else, obviously there's fans that watch the sport throughout, or there's fans that just watch the actual main fights. But this is a fight that has to happen soon. But I don't. Is there a lot of money in this fight? I don't think so. Still think Spence Crawford 2 generates more than this. Hank versus Haney versus Tank. But it is a fight that we need to see. You know, it doesn't make no sense them fighting anyone else. Let's have one name, one face, and one champion, and that's going to be a cracking fight. The boxer versus the puncher. But you know, I hope they don't long this fight out. This is a fight that we need to see.
That's the next fight. There is no other fight.
See it as soon as possible. Yeah.
I mean, either that or Bivol fights Canelo again. I think there's only two other fights out there.
We've seen that now. Let's
seen that. And
let's crown a king. Let's crown the king in 175 pounds. You know?
Absolutely agree,
and
man.
I do think if it's going to generate that extra bit of money that I don't think it does, then it needs to go to Saudi Arabia. You don't want to see it on a top ranked show. You don't want to see it on a local broadcaster show. You don't want to see it on Sky Sports. Let it go over to Saudi Arabia where there's a bit of money involved. We've also got our first UK show of the year this coming weekend. As Liverpool's very own Natasha Jonas versus Mikaela. She defends her IBF welterweight title against the American fighter. Lights that are going to be in Liverpool. Ron, I'm going up there for the fight, spending a few days there. So we'll be bringing you guys a lot of lights out content and lots of coverage of fight week, including interviews and action from the workouts, the weigh-ins, and you name it. Ron, let's just before we wrap it up, give us a prediction for Natasha Jonas versus Mikaela. I'm going to give my prediction, and I think Natasha Jonas is going to beat her, and I think she's going to knock her out. I just think because she's in front of her home fans, she's the defending champion. She's a fighter that's also getting better with age. She's on a great run right now. I think she's going to knock Mikaela out on fight night. I really do believe she's going to do it.
It's a big call, man. I mean, Natasha Jonas is probably in the last few fights of her career now. She's looking, how many fights has she got left in her? So,
Ron, there's something you don't understand about the people of Liverpool, okay?
Oh,
unlike your team, we support our fighters and we push our fighters on, okay? I mean, you just only got to go to Anfield on a European night or when it's a big game or any other game. One day I'll take you and then you'll realize what I'm talking about. But yeah, sorry, what was you saying?
So as I was saying with Natasha Jonas, so age is catching up with her. So Mikaela, she's been so close, but yet so far in her, to get that elusive kind of title. I think who did she lose? Is it Terry Harper that she lost against?
No, Baumgardner, Alicia Baumgardner.
Baumgardner, sorry. Who lost against Terry Harper then? Was it?
It was Baumgardner. She lost to Baumgardner.
Baumgardner, okay. And so she's going to be extra motivated to kind of, get that world title. So I wish them both all the luck. Natasha Jonas, where does she go from there? If she wins this, if she comes through, what does that set her up for? But, great for women's boxing. And let's see what happens on Saturday night. It's been talked of as a good fight.
Let's see. It's good to have our first UK boxing show of the year back. Obviously, you got Jack Cullen versus Zach Chelly, the rematch on that card. You've got quite a few British fighters as well. Aaron McKenna versus Linus Adofia. And it'd be good to get behind the camera and start stirring the pot again. Ron, thank you very much for joining us, mate. Obviously, it's not a long one today, but hopefully this time next week we'll have more to talk about in the boxing world. To the viewers out there, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on the bell for all notifications. Check us out on all of our social media platforms. Links are below in the description. And of course, if you want to hear this podcast on any of the audio platforms, again, links are below in the description. Ron, pleasure as always. Congratulations on earning a massive point against the mighty Tottenham Hotspur yesterday. And to the viewers out there, thank you very much for listening to podcast 70 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast.